Welcome to the WTR Small Cap Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Gerdeman, Vice Chair and Co-founder and Chief Marketing Officer of Water Tower Research. In today's podcast episode, I'm being joined by Ben Wolff, Co-founder, President, and CEO of PDYN AI, NASDAQ ticker symbol PDYN. PDYN AI sells real-time learning and reasoning AI software platforms for robots, drones, and smart industrial systems. Also joining us is my Water Tower Research Technology Equity Research colleague, John Roy. Good morning, gentlemen, and thank you for joining today's podcast.
Good morning, Tim.
Great to be here, Tim.
Ben, considering Sarcos Robotics' legacy in groundbreaking robotics hardware, one does wonder what sparked the strategic shift to PDYN AI's software-centric approach, and what key insights drove that fundamental change in direction?
Thanks for the question, Tim, and thanks for having me today. As you know, our predecessor company, Sarcos Robotics, had been in business for more than 30 years, working on a whole wide variety of different types of robotic hardware solutions, including humanoid robots and exoskeletons and derivatives of both of those. And we spent a lot of time working with the Department of Defense and NASA and other customers on evolving the technologies relating to those hardware products. In 2021, we went public through a de-SPAC transaction and had still a little ways to go in front of us to try and commercialize those hardware platforms. And there's a reason why they call it hardware. It is hard. And as a result, it took us longer and more money than we expected to try and commercialize these hardware platforms. We were actually trying to build both hardware platforms and software platforms to work with those hardware platforms along the way. And what we discovered in kind of the early 2020 timeframe was that our software that we had been developing was equally relevant, not only on the hardware platforms that we had developed, but also on all manner of other types of machines that were either fixed stationary robots or mobile machines like drones. And so as we did some ongoing planning about both how to best utilize the resources that we had on hand, the time that we had available, and the market opportunity, we realized there was a much larger market opportunity for us to be able to sell our software to both end users of robots and to OEMs that were producing robots. The market opportunity was much larger, and the margins were going to be significantly better than what you find in the hardware business. Add to that kind of the unfortunate situation that the company found itself in, which was we were running low on cash when I came back into the company about a year ago, and we decided to make the pivot to software. So we could make our resources go much further and have a much greater probability of success by making the pivot to focus on the software that we had been developing for the prior 5 years.
That really makes a lot of strategic sense. Thanks for that explanation, Ben, and I'll now turn it over to John Roy.
Great. Thanks, Tim. Ben, as a double E that switched to computer science, I can definitely, software is a more interesting way to go. So speaking of that, what specific ways does PDYN AI really empower the companies to really break through these automation barriers?
We are focused on using a version of human-like reasoning and learning to teach machines how to process fairly limited amounts of data to be able to perform complex tasks much the way we humans do ourselves. So we have, number one, a big dichotomy between us and many other AI companies is we're focused on physical world AI, where our AI is partnering with machines to manipulate objects in the real world. That's very different than 95% of the other AI companies that are out there that are really analytical in nature. And what they do is they live in the cloud or in the internet or on a machine somewhere, and they are processing copious amounts of data to try and help us humans make better decisions. So we're not that. We are all about manipulating objects and doing jobs in the physical world. So that's one differentiator. Secondly, when you look at other AI companies that are similarly focused on doing physical world AI, many of them or most of them rely on these very large foundation models that ingest billions of data points to teach the model or the machine how to perform a task in a fairly constrained environment. And it can take massive amounts of money and massive amounts of time to be able to get enough data points so that a machine can reliably and predictably perform a task. We have turned that paradigm on its head. If you think about where you guys are sitting during this interview and you wanted to get up and go use the restroom, for example, if you think about the number of data points that you would process consciously or subconsciously to be able to navigate from where you're sitting to the restroom, those are billions of data points that your senses will ingest. Some of them are very relevant to navigating, but many of them are not. Many of them are just kind of background noise. Big foundation models don't know how to separate the what's really relevant from the background noise, because in the foundation model approach, all data is relevant. In our case, we are specifically tuning our machines with our software to just do the task that is in front of it and to ignore all of the noise. So we are probabilistic in nature rather than deterministic. We can train a robot to perform a new task in a fraction of the time of the more traditional approach. And when I say a fraction, I mean in a matter of minutes. We can train a machine to perform a new task, whereas the more conventional approach with foundation models might take years. And then on top of that, kind of the last big differentiator is we don't teach a machine just to perform a single task. So if you think about an assembly line robot, oftentimes once that machine is programmed to perform a task, that's all that robot lives to do. That same task 24/7 over and over. With our approach, we can teach a machine how to perform a wide variety of tasks. So the robot is no longer single-threaded. It can multitask, if you will. And that's a big hallmark of what we do. So it's both the ease of learning, the expedited learning, and the ability to have flexibility to perform a lot of different tasks.
All right. So by cutting down to the specific data that's the most important, you can get a lot more efficient. I mean, by orders of magnitude.
That's right. And what that allows us to do, John, is it allows us to process all of the data and have our algorithms actually live on the edge where the robot is. We do not have algorithms that reside in the cloud where there has to be continuous back and forth communication between the cloud and the machine. Everything we do is right on the edge. And that's only been made possible in the last several years because of the advancements in NVIDIA chips that live on the edge. If we didn't have the kind of processing power with low size, low power requirements, and high processing capability like we have today, we couldn't be doing what we're doing.
All right. I can imagine that also helps with data security.
Absolutely. You got it.
So you have two platforms. You have Palladyne IQ and you have Palladyne Pilot AI. So why two and what's the difference?
So Palladyne IQ is the much more complex and sophisticated of the two products, and it is intended to be used on industrial robots, primarily stationary robots, so think assembly line. And it is what allows the machines to think more like humans by separating all of the noise and just focusing on the information that actually matters to get the job done. And that is something that gets that sits on top of the operating system that is shipped with the industrial robots from the manufacturer. So it doesn't override it, but it works in tandem with it. It's kind of like having on a x86 computer, having DOS as the operating system or Windows, but then you have your applications that ride on top of it. We are an application that rides on top of the operating system for our IQ product. The Pilot product is a derivative of IQ in many respects. It's kind of a skinny down version, and it is intended to be used on drones or other types of mobile machines where collaboration between the machines, because they are mobile, is important. So collaboration on a fixed robot isn't so important. But when you talk about having, let's say, 5 or 6 drones in the air, and they're all trying to gather information about the environment, whether it's an industrial setting where they're trying to find, let's say, a gas plume at an oil refinery to figure out where is the leak coming from. So you have a group of machines that are flying in the air and they're painting a picture of the environment, collaborating together without having to have each drone driven by a human pilot. So they're autonomously collaborating. Or in the military context where you're trying to keep eyes on the ground on multiple targets and you're trying to track autonomously targets, and we're trying to reduce the cognitive load on the soldier so that one soldier doesn't have to manage each and every individual drone. So that's the purpose of the Pilot product. It's a derivative of IQ and much more narrowly tailored to focus on mobility applications.
Yeah, it sounds like a good distinction. So you haven't recently some very positive financial results, and the commercialization looks like it's going pretty good. So what goals is Palladyne AI set for yourself over the next year?
So we haven't given any forward guidance of any kind, but what we have said that we are focused on is now that we've got the IQ product complete with commercialization as of the end of last year, that's the IQ product, and the pilot product that we expect to have commercialized by the end of this quarter. Our whole focus is going out and proving to our customers and to our investors that we are filling a serious need and that customers are willing to pay for the product that we're bringing to market. So our focus during 2025 is to start getting marquee customers in the door, getting them using it, and singing our praises, which will help us then leverage those relationships into other customer relationships. So 25 is all about launching the product commercially and starting to drive revenues.
Right. Now, you had mentioned a little bit about military applications, and I know the recent Air Force Research Lab project. If you could give any kind of color or insight on that, that would be really helpful.
Sure. So we've had the good fortune of partnering with DoD on a number of development programs over the years. And right now we have relationships with DoD funded contracts that are supporting the development efforts on both the Palladyne IQ product and on the Palladyne Pilot product. In the case of our most recent announcement about Palladyne Pilot, the Pentagon came to us and said that they wanted to see the software be able to be used on emerging types of AI chipsets that may or may not find their ways into more sophisticated small drones. So in anticipation of these new chips being released, these new, more capable chips, we've landed a contract to port our software onto those new chips so that as they start to proliferate in the drone ecosystem, we will already have our software ready to go.
Right, makes sense. So can you talk a little bit about Red Cat? I know you've had some recent successes there and some recent milestones. So maybe if you give us some color on what's going on there.
So Red Cat recently announced that they have secured a very large contract with the U.S. Army on the short-range reconnaissance program. I think they're producing one of the best next-generation small drone products in the world. It's an extremely impressive platform, and obviously the Army agreed. So we formed a partnership with them, I'm going to say it's more than 6 months ago, maybe around 6 months ago, to be able to work with them to port our software onto the Teal drones, which is a subsidiary of Red Cat, and to demonstrate what can be done when you have these drones collaborating with one another to be able to enhance situational awareness in the field for the military. And we have just started flying on the Teal 2 drone, and we have had some successful demonstrations with that. So we're really excited about where this capability can go. You know, the capability that we're offering is similar to the capability that the Pentagon has had for years on much larger drone platforms, things like Predators and Reapers, you know, machines that cost $30 million. Now we're talking about being able to have that same kind of capability on machines that cost tens of thousands of dollars instead of having to spend tens of millions of dollars.
Great, that sounds excellent. So, what are you looking at for the future in terms of shaping AI and robotics industries in the next few years? If you just take your visionary glasses and put them on and look out, what do you see happening?
I think the focus on physical world intelligence, artificial intelligence, is going to skyrocket. I mean, we've seen tremendous leaps forward in digital world AI. And one of the reasons that there has been that kind of success is because if you think about it, you know, all of the data that is in the internet, 40 years worth of data that has been developed in the internet, it can now be scraped and utilized by these large AI models to be able to take the sum total of the world's intelligence and in a way that we humans could never do, be able to synthesize it, analyze it, and come up with great insights and recommendations. I think we will see that same kind of evolution in physical intelligence, but what's going to have to happen is, since we don't have massive databases that reflect what your home and your office and my home and my office look like, and we don't have massive databases about every movement that every robot can do, I think we're going to have to find ways, like we're doing, to make physical intelligence more accessible, more usable, more economical. And I think we're going to see some huge advancements there. And AI, I think, will become a much more relevant part of our everyday lives, both at work and at home, when it comes to physical world intelligence.
Great. So that's it for my questions. Tim, did you want to close us off here?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much, John. Thank you for joining us today, Ben Wolff, co-founder, president, and CEO of Palladyne AI, NASDAQ ticker symbol PDYN. Also, thanks to my equity research colleague, John Roy, for joining us today. And then finally, a special thanks to the producer and editor of the podcast, my WTR colleague, Joe Brunetto. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe, as well as visiting www.watertowerresearch.com to stay up to speed on the company's small cap written research reports, podcasts, fireside chats, and conference schedules. We will see you next time for another edition of the WTR Small Cap Spotlight Podcast.